Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Nisha, your host, and I will be interviewing the author of this amazing book I read recently, Nimue, Freeing Merlin. Good afternoon, Mrs. Sullivan. I am so thrilled and excited to be talking to you today. An international award winning author who has written over 15 books and has won over 50 literary awards. It's an absolute honor for me to be interviewing you today.
Yes, and actually, I think it's 20 books now and 63 literary awards. So on it goes. Yes, when there's a pandemic that happens, you have lots of time to write.
Yes. Without further ado, let's jump into my first question. When did you first come across stories of Nimue and Merlin, and what attracted you to delving into the Celtic mythology further?
Well, when I was 21, I was offered an overseas research award to King's College London, and I accepted without really knowing what I was getting into. But what I got to do as part of the doctoral program was go around and gather folklore and legends in mostly Ireland, but also in the UK. And so I got so lit up by it. I absolutely loved it. It was something inside of me just started to sparkle. I became really curious, especially about the really super powerful women, because the only other goddesses that I found that were quite powerful were in India, like Durga or Kali. So I was like, well, they have to exist in my culture too. Um, so of course, everyone loves Merlin. I mean, everyone, or most people, I should say, want their little bit of magic. And so when I ran across Nimue, I thought she was a really curious character because in some versions she's Merlin's lover, and in some versions she's a evil sorceress. And and because there's such a vast understanding of Nimue, or because she can appear in so many different ways, I was like, how do you wrap your mind around this character that has many parts? So I became really fascinated by her. I'm like, what's the truth? And yeah.
The amazing research that you have put in it really shows in the books, and you can see the characters and the magical scenes and the pictures. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I loved doing the research and I loved writing it. Yeah. I feel like she's a friend, like an archetypal friend.
So I often see authors very often immerse themselves into the characters and write the story as if they were one of the characters. So did you relate or identify with, specifically with some one character in this book?
Nina, for sure, because my father had died. I mean, it's not an autobiography, but there were themes that were going on in my life that were similar. My father had died. I was trying to deal with that. I went to England to find my roots, and that's what happens with Nimue in the beginning of the book. And
Right.
also, I did a past life memory with a British healer, and I was like, oh, you really can flash back into time and find our magical Avalonian characters, or whoever, could be anybody. Yeah.
That's nice. I mean, turning something that was really heartbreaking and putting it into a book, it's amazing. So,
Thank
as an
you.
Indian, it was very interesting that you mentioned Kali Yuga and Satyug in this book. I'm really curious to know, how that came about.
Kali Yuga and the Satya Yuga, the changing of the ages.
Yes.
And I might have a totally Western different understanding of it, but I did spend some time in India. I absolutely love India. In fact, I will say this, when I went to India, I went for 2 weeks. I stayed for 2 months. There was a Durga puja going on when I landed. And I became so fascinated by the culture. When I came back, I was like, I think we overlap much more than we realize, just culturally. I think there's a deep, deep wisdom below the surface that's there if we can tap into it. So the Kali Yuga, Satya Yuga idea, I mean, I know with Vedic astrology, different people have different ideas about when that is. I do Western astrology. In Western astrology, we've just stepped in to the Satya Yuga. And I think in Vedic, it hasn't happened yet. So who knows
Yes,
exactly? But what I do think is really interesting is we're clearly at the edge of a new time, whether that's, I mean, in Western astrology, it's more the Aquarian age, we're stepping into the age of technology and space flight and rebellion and, that sort of Aquarian energy. And I think what I like about the Aquarian energy is it gives space for everybody. It's very much about, it's non-hierarchy, they don't like the hierarchy in the Aquarian age. Ganymede in that myth throws down the cup of the gods and refuses to serve Zeus. So there's something about coming back to what's true, what's ultimately true underneath all of the projections society has built, all the structures society has built. And I think that's my curiosity. Like I met, when they were doing the Durga Puja in Mumbai, I was like, what? Everybody goes out in the street and celebrate. I love it. That was so great. And I was like, can you imagine if that happened here? Like we all went out and celebrated Ganaida or Nimue or I guess there is Bridget. There are characters like Anu who becomes Anne, who becomes Anna, who becomes Saint Anne. Bridget is another one. There are goddesses that move through the changing of the epochs, and I think there's some that are born during the changing of the ages. And I would say characters like Nimue and Ganaida, who's in my next book that's coming, Riddles of the Ancestors, just finished. Anyway, so those characters are more for this time that we're in now, I think.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's amazing how, and quite fascinating actually, when you see how different cultures, they can have similar messages, and it really speaks to different readers all across the globe.
I think so. I mean, if we really think about it, if you go back to, I mean, it'd be great to just have a conversation with you, at a different time to see all these different layers. But one thing I really learned in the Celtic world was I learned about logres, and that's what Camelot is based on. It's based on virtues. It's based on the virtues, on goodness. And is what I understand about this society in India, it's based on the Vedas. It's there, so there's a huge crossover. So the stories are here to teach us about ourselves, the challenges that we go through. And we're supposed to go through challenges because that's how we learn and grow. And there are deities around that have our back, that as we do this. And so there's a living landscape. I found that in India too. There was a living landscape. And I was like, wow, I feel really at home in this.
It's nice. It's like every one of us has an inner goddess, so to speak, that comes out when it's really needed, and your book really showed that. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you felt that, because I, again, like I said, I also like Kali. You mentioned the goddess Kali, and when I was working with the character Morgan in the book, and I didn't call her Morgan Le Fay because she's a fairy in that, but I called her Morgan, which is the older sea goddess version, and she's quite powerful, and she's actually a healer, but she's tricky, and I really thought about Kali a lot when I was working with her character, because she has that ability to just destroy anything that's not truth, but she's doing it for you,
Yep.
so you can find
That's
your
nice.
way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, moving on, going by the scene and the character descriptions, it is evident that you have done immense research writing this book. You mentioned visiting St. Nectan's Glen in England. So, what was that like?
Well, there's, for thousands of years, people have come to the British Isles to learn about magic. It's a tradition here, and I don't know if that exists anyplace else. And when you go to, this is in Cornwall, and when you go to the southwestern part of England, you can visit places like Tintagel, which is where King Arthur mythologically was born. And so I went out to Tintagel and stood by the sea and went to Merlin's cave and ran down there between the tides, because you can only go when the tides are low, and felt the energy and really felt Igraine and some of the other characters. So they live, those characters live in those deities live in the landscape. So I went to St. Nectan's Glen afterwards, and that's a hidden fairy glen. And it's it's a very magical place. You can go and stay there. There's a little place you can stay. It's a waterfall, but it's also mythologically where Nimue was sealed up, just in the same way that Merlin was sealed into a tree. She was captured in this glen. And there's a more ancient deity named Nectan, and who becomes, again, so the deity doesn't have to die off, they become Christianized, so he becomes Saint Nectan. But he's basically an ancient water god. And I went in and stood beneath the waterfall, which was really cold. It was February. I stood and I was like, I have to do this. So I waded in, stood beneath, yelled a lot. And then I actually started to download the book at that point. That was actually the beginning of understanding Nimue and what she was going through to put the many sides of herself together again. So it was a powerful immersion into this.
Quite an inspiration you had there.
Yes, it was. It was total. In the Celtic world, inspiration is called Awen. And so I had the Awen there.
So, I, as in the book you mentioned, a Merlin lives in every age. So I was just wondering, have you considered writing about a Merlin in a futuristic world?
If you just hang on for a little bit, Riddles of the Ancestors will be out soon. And yes,
Oh,
that
wow.
happens in the next book.
That's amazing. I will be looking forward to that one.
Good. I'm excited about the new book. Yes.
When I first started reading the book, I felt like I was being pulled into this imaginary world of magical characters. Later, I realized that this book is much, much more than that. What would you like to say to readers who might dismiss this book thinking it's just another book on legends and myths?
Well, it is in a way another book on legends and myths. On the very surface level, when you first look at it, that's, it's like, oh, do you need another book on King Arthur? But I think what's a little bit different about this book, or what I feel about the book, is, and maybe because I went and stood under the waterfall at St. Nectan's Glen, I feel there's a transmission in the book, and there's an invitation into magic that's real. And magic that's virtuous, I will say too, like the good magic that we all need to operate and function in a world that is pretty crazy. But when we have when we're connected to our own sparkle, and we know our guides, and we know the living landscape and where to go, where we can feel charged up again, who has our back, I think it's really healing and very helpful.
That's nice. So I think I'm done with all of my questions, and so I would like to thank you so much for joining us today for this wonderful interview. I enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure that the viewers will too. Did you have anything that you would like to add?
Yes, if people are interested in the stories and they want to learn more, I have done a series of cards called Imaginosophy, and you can go on to imaginosophy.com. And what's fun about going on to imaginosophy.com is that you can click on Nimue or Merlin or Genaida or I have 112 that you can click on and learn more about. So you can actually start developing your own relationships. And like I said, I think it's really important for our navigation in this time to know that there are these beautiful deities. So that's available. The book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, just about anywhere. You can go onto my website too, which is AynCatesSullivan.com, AynCates Sullivan.com. or infinitelightpublishing.com. And there are more videos and different things you can find out about there. But I really encourage, I mean, both men and women, but these books, I think I initially wrote really for women because in the Greco-Roman traditions, the goddesses aren't very empowered. In the Celtic world, especially the Irish world, these are very powerful women. And I think they can serve as role models so that we can know how to integrate and weave and be strong in this world and yet still love our partners and our children and our families. So they're very earthy, loving, present characters, archetypes, really. So I encourage everybody to go delve in. I'm always curious to know if somebody finds an archetype that's like, oh, that's my guiding archetype. So if you do find one and you go, that's me, send me a message on Facebook. I'm easy to find on Facebook and I'd love to hear.
Sure. I did go on that website and I was looking through the pictures. It's very, very interesting. So, yes.
Good, we'll go play. We all need to play more, don't we? I find our
Yes.
sparkle, really, we need to use our imagination and play because that's when our sparkle comes alive. Because there's so many people right now who feel broken and depressed and in despair. And the way through that is to walk on the land, to find beings that light us up, and to find our own sparkle. And that is, I think it's just really, really important. And so I encourage everybody to go do it, write your own books and play your own play and
find your guiding light.
find your guiding light. Yeah, and follow it.
Okay. Thank you so much. I wish you great success in your future endeavors, and I'm looking forward to your next book. And have a magical day.
You too.
Thank you so much.
I'll win. We'll have the I'll win. Okay.
That was Ayn Cates Sullivan, and I hope you had as much fun as I did doing the interview. If you haven't already watched the book review video, you can do so by clicking the link given in the description box below, and I will also leave a link to the book. If you enjoyed watching, consider giving it a like, subscribe and share with family and friends, and comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and answer any questions you may have. Have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye.